you would have known that I had to come, I had to suffer, I had to die, and then I had to resurrect. But you did not believe. You heard it and did not believe. And now comes the point of the future of my nation, because, Israel is a miracle. No matter how you can look at it, there is no logical explanation to the rebirth of a nation after 2,000 years of being away from its land, the rebirth of a language that was not being spoken anywhere, the rebirth of a land that was a barren wasteland. Mark Twain shows up in the middle of the 1800s to Israel, and he writes that even the cactus, which is a great friend of the desert, did not live there. I mean, it was that bad. And so God restored the land, restored the people back to their land, restored their language. This is something that no one has explanation to unless you read Bible prophecy and you know that God promised the nation of Israel that at the very end, he will bring them back to their land. And so the return of the Jews back to their land and the establishment of the state of Israel in 1948, can a nation be born in a moment at once? Yes, a nation was born immediately. And as soon as Zion was ready to give birth, it did. And so Israel was born in 1948, and since then it's in a constant battle to survive. And if you study the wars of Israel, and if you go beyond all the heroic stories, you will find out that unless the Lord fought for us, we would have been long ago completely dead. And so God not only brought the Jews back to their land, but he sustains them in the land up until today. So that is a huge thing, because when Jesus spoke to the disciples about the signs of the end, he gave them an interesting parable on the fig tree. And he said, learn the parable from the fig tree. When its leaves comes back to be green and bear fruit, then you know that the summer is near. The fig tree is a symbol of the national privileges of Israel. You can be olive tree as a Gentile. You can be a fig tree, a vine as a Gentile, because these are the spiritual and religious privileges that now you have also. But as a Gentile, you cannot be the fig tree, because that is the national privilege of Israel. And Israel is being born now. Nationally, it's being born right now. And so the Bible says, when you see, he's telling the church, when you see the fig tree coming back to life, when the church sees that Israel is back to life nationally, you know that summer is near. So this is already a big sign of that we are at the very end times. But when you sail through the book of Revelation, you can clearly see that maybe God restored Israel back physically to their land, but now he has to restore them spiritually also back to himself. That has not happened yet. We are now at the point where the Jewish people are back in their land, but they're not back to their God, and they're not yet acknowledging their Messiah. Not yet. I'm saying not yet because Paul said to the church in Rome.
Yeah, this is Joel 3 and 1. For behold, right, since he's talking about them being in the land, the Lord said he wasn't going to have the Israelites in that land into the last days. So right here, for behold, which means feast your eyes, look, pay attention. In those days, right, in the end, latter days, in that time, when I shall bring again, then I'm going to bring again the captivity, right, because they're going to be in slavery, right, because every time Israel got exiled or put out, they went into slavery. These people haven't been in slavery, right? Captivity of Judah and Jerusalem. Then the Lord will bring them back to the land after being in captivity, right? And they shouldn't be in the land in the first place. But right here, Isaiah chapter 2, verse 4, and he, right, the he is talking about Yahweh, Bashem Yahweh Shai, through his son, Yahweh Shai, shall judge among the nations, right? So it's all the nations of the earth. So when had the Lord judged all the nations of the earth at one time? That hasn't happened, right? And shall rebuke many people, which means judgment, right? And they shall beat their swords, right? Their killing instruments, which the modern day sword now is a gun, and in their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. It says, O house of Jacob, which is another way of saying Israel, come ye and let us walk in the light of Yahweh, right? It's them, the Lord bringing us back to the land, back into the knowledge, the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, and bringing us back into the light, right? Matter of fact, let's see what it says above. Many people shall go and say, come, let us go up to the mountain of Yahweh, to the house of the God of Jacob, right? Which is another way of saying Israel. And he will teach us, which is basically when we get back in that land, and the whole world is not going to Israel right now to be taught. So all the nations are going to go, right? And he will teach us his ways, right? Which is the law, statutes, commandments, right? Not standing there without a beard, speaking about how you're the fig and everybody could be the wild olive tree, which don't make sense, right? The figs also symbolizes missiles, nuclear missiles, right? Which the entire world is going to get, but definitely Israel's going to, modern day Israel is going to receive missiles, man, ICBMs, right? His ways, and we will walk in his path from out of Zion, right? Which is once we get into that land, shall go forth out of the land of what you call Israel, which is another way of saying Israel, Zion, which is monument, or the Lord basically said he remembered us, because monument goes back to remembering, right? A remembrance. That's what Zion means. The Lord said he will remember, he will be thinking, or he will remember us. Shall go forth the law. What law? The law of Moses. While the dude is standing there without a beard and all this other nonsense, and the word of Yahweh from Jerusalem. Hey, now let's keep it and go back to what I was reading before. So in the land, when they're there in that land, the whole world and all these people will be going, hey, how do we learn? We need to learn the Lord, the ways of the Lord, because this is what establishes the earth and the rulership on the earth. And he shall judge among the nations. So the Lord is going to judge the whole entire world and rebuke many people, and they shall beat their what? Swords into what? Plowshares, right? So there's going to be no you taking your weapon to kill somebody. It's for farming, for working. And the Lord said it's going to be continue employment, right? Which is slavery, right? And their spears into pruning hooks, and nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn of war anymore. And that's when we get into the land. But since these so-called Jewish people been in the land, it's been war. Them getting into the land was basically World War One. Them actually getting into the land was World War Two, or them trying to get into the land, World War One, which they didn't really actually all the way get in there. But World War Two is when they actually got into there. World War II was war of them getting into that land, right? And then they've been there, and it's been war after war. I mean, you have the, I mean, was it? You had the wars. So I guess let's go after that time. So you still had the Vietnam War. You still had the was it the Vietnam War? I think there was another war that people say that they don't really talk about. Is it Thailand or something like that? You had wars like that. You had the Iraq War, the Desert Sands, the Desert Storm. Desert Storm. You had all these other different wars, and all the way up to today, you had the 20-year war against the goddamn Taliban that they basically withdrew and still lost the war after 20 years. So,
big moment. 4 p.m. Rothschild Boulevard, David Ben Gurion officially declaring Israel an independent state. The Jews finally had a home. His talk is pretty nationalistic and very thoughtful. He stresses on points like the state of Israel would strive to develop the land for the good of all its residents, be based upon foundations of liberty, justice, and peace, and that Israel would ensure social and political rights to all citizens without discrimination of religion, race, or sex. But did any of that happen? See, Palestine after World War I was under British control and was seeing a series of violent outbreaks between the Arabs and Jews. And to resolve that, the UN proposed a partition plan which would divide the land into 2 states, Jewish Israel and Arab Palestine, while keeping Jerusalem a UN-controlled international zone. The votes came in. 33 countries approved, 13 countries voted against it, while 10 completely abstained from voting. And although the Arab states walked out as a form of protest, the partition plan was adopted. On the ground, tensions were high, and they continued to escalate with the massacre at Deir Yassin. This started the mass exodus of Palestinians, while Jewish immigration, which was encouraged by the Zionists, was on the rise. That's when the UN intervened with a 4-week ceasefire, which worked in favor of Israel. Ignoring the UN arms embargo, Israel imported heavy armaments from Czechoslovakia and used the time to reorganize. This brings us to a turning point in the history of the war. As soon as the ceasefire was over, Israel launched a counter-offensive, occupying 2 strategic Arab towns which were allocated to Arab Palestine by the UN. 70,000 Palestinians who lived there were forced to flee. What did the first Arab-Israeli war bring? An Egyptian military presence in the Gaza Strip, and Jordan was gifted the West Bank as a token for its loyalty to Britain and the Zionists. Meanwhile, 700,000 Palestinians were driven out of their homeland. And the UN's 2-state solution? Well, it never saw the light of day. It's been 70 years. The crisis of this catastrophe continues.
Chapter 3, verse 2, and I will also gather the nations, just like it was saying in Isaiah 2. I will gather the nations, and I will bring them down to the valley of Yehoshaphat, right, which is the valley of judgment, right, because he said to judge them, right? So it's the exact same thing, to judge the nations. So the Lord is going to judge the nations, but he's going to bring Israel back from what? Captivity first, putting them in the land, right? And then there's going to be this great war, the World War III. So the Lord's going to bring them down to the valley of Yehoshaphat, right, for World War III, and I will plead with them there for my people and my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations, right? Because they scattered us amongst all these nations, and the Lord's going to bring all the nations and judge them, then put us in that land. And then when we get put in that land, there ain't going to be war anymore. So you tell me why they're in the land, and they don't know their Messiah, and there's war going on. That doesn't make sense, because if you're in the land, you got to know the Lord. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't make sense, right? And have parted my land. Oh, so who parted the Lord's land? Let's find that out. Yeah, Ezekiel 36:2. Thus saith Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, power, because the enemy have said against you, which are you so-called black, Hispanic, and Native Indian, of Indian and Negro descent, right? Right, there you go, pride. The pride goes before the fall, right? Aha, right? Right, and we know who go aha, right? These so-called Jewish, right? Even the ancient places are ours in possession, which is talking about the land of Israel. They have the land of Israel in their possession, right? Yeah, so therefore prophesied and say, thus saith Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, power, because they have made you desolate and swallowed you up on every side, that ye may be a possession, which are talking about you so-called black, Hispanic, and Native Indians, unto the residue of the heathen, which are talking about those Jewish, right? Because well, or even the elites, you know, of their thing, but mostly to these Jewish, because everybody has to pay their taxes, and their birth certificate is basically saying you're a property of the Rothschild, the Bilderbergs, the DuPonts, the Gettys, the Oppenheimers, those top banking families, right? Which are those Jewish, were the ones that say, aha, they got you. So that's the thing where it's at, right? Got you in their possession. That residue, that small bit of that 1% that rules the world, right? And ye are taken up in the lips of talkers, right? Yeah, you just a nigga, you a spick, you will never amount to nothing. This and that, blah blah blah, so on and so forth. You're nothing. You're not the Israelites, right? But and are in infamy of the people. Because why? Because we're out there saying that we're the Israelites, and we're breaking down the prophecy the correct manner, and they have no choice but to really be like, oh wow, like and really listen, because there's no gainsayer, because the Lord said there's no one to be able to gainsay against the truth, right? Because this guy's sitting there lying, and these people are really believing this nonsense, right? So we're infamy of the peoples. So the so-called black, I hate to say it that way, but black Hebrew Israelites, that's the infamy of the thing. But we're really just the Israelites, right? Of Indian and Negro descent, and the Israelite foreigners who are around the world on the four winds, preaching in truth and sincerity, right? Therefore, ye mountains of Israel, hear the words of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, power. Thus saith Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, power, to the mountains, see, to these governments, and to the hills, the smaller governments, and to the rivers, and to the valleys, to the desolate waste, and to the cities that are forsaken, which became a prey and derision, right? To the residue of the heathen that are round about, right? Because they basically took the land, and that land is basically still basically a wasteland because most of that stuff is imported in. The grass and the trees and the flowers are imported. Most of that stuff is imported in, right? To make it look like it's flourishing, to try to make it look like they're really the people, because it said the land is going to flourish, but that land's not really flourishing because the people are not in that land, right? Because what? Here we go. Therefore, thus saith Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, power surely in the fire of my jealousy, right? When he's coming to judge all these nations. So this is the fire of the Lord's jealousy. Have I spoken against the residue of the heathen, right? That those so-called Jewish, the top banking families, and against all Idumea, which is another way of saying Edom, Esau, Edom, which have what? Parted my land in their possession, because that's the ones, that's who's in that land. In their possession with the joy of all their heart, which is your mind, lob, your mind, your heart, and deceitful minds, right? There you go, proves it. And cast it out for a prey, right? They wanted to attack it and get it and call it theirs, right? Prophesy therefore concerning the land of Israel, and say unto the mountains, so you governments, because the Lord said he's going to gather all the nations, so all you governments, and to the hills, right? All the smaller governments, smaller nations, and the rivers and the valleys, and thus saith Yahweh, Bashem Yahweh Shai power, behold, I have spoken in my jealousy and in my fury, because ye have borne the shame of the heathen, right? Because you basically help these devils, Psalms 83, you help them put the Lord's children into bondage and into slavery, and to keep them down and low and not know that they were the Israelites. So you're gonna bear the same shame. You're gonna therefore, thus saith Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai power, I have lifted up my hand, and surely the heathen that are round about, they shall bear their shame. But ye, O mountains of Israel, ye shall shoot forth your branches, right? We're gonna we're gonna have lots of children in the kingdom. You know what I'm saying? Basically. And ye and yield your fruit, right, children, to my people of Israel, and they are at hand to come, right? The kingdom is coming. It's not here yet, right? It says Zechariah chapter 9. So this dude's talking about end time prophecy, but this is end time prophecy right here. It says, and a bastard, right? A bastard shall dwell in Ashdod, right? And Ashdod is a port city in Jerusalem, right? And I will cut off the pride of the Philistines, right? So you're there with because this was talking about at that time, but we know at this time that it's you Idumeans, right? You so-called Jewish, right? Edom is in that land. So, but it said a bastard shall dwell in that land. So it says, and I will take away his blood out of his mouth, and his abomination from between his teeth, and but he that remaineth, even he shall be for our power, which is Yahweh, and he shall be as a governor in Jerusalem and Ekron, and as a Jebusite, right? And this is the Lord said, I will encamp about my house, which is talking about the nation of Israel, which is starting with the people, because of the army, because of him that passeth by, and because of him that returneth, and no oppressor, right? Because that's basically what the Jewish have been. They've been oppressors, right? They basically they paid for and even owned and even ran uh the slave ships and slave farms, right? Of the so-called black, so-called native. They've had that. They paid for that. The Jewish, right? So there'll be no more pressure shall pass through them anymore. So we're not going to go into slavery ever again. For now have I seen with my eyes, right? And then they were talking, the guy was saying something about they haven't accepted the Messiah. Well, how are you in that land? Well, according to the Bible, a bastard, also what? Someone with a wicked mind or evil mindset was setting that land for a prey should be in that land, right? And then the Lord went back to Joel, says they have parted my land. Well, who have parted the Lord's land? The heathen, dealing with the so-called Jewish and the so-called what they call Palestinians now, but which is basically Ishmael and a bunch of other mixed people, mixed multitude people. They're out there splitting the Lord's land. But the Lord said once the children of Israel get back in that land, there will be no more war at all. But since they've been there, it's been war, death, pestilence, and you're going through war and pestilence right now. But no one's actually saying it. They're listening to this guy like, yeah, okay. It's crazy. But that lets you know that you Christians don't read the Bible. Period. And rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Right. Why? Shout, O daughter of Jerusalem, right, which is the northern kingdom, southern kingdom, and the northern kingdom, so-called black, Hispanic, and Native Indian. Behold, which means feature eyes, look, pay attention, thy king, which is Yahushai, cometh unto thee. He is just and having salvation, lowly, and rideth upon an ass and upon a colt, the foal of an ass, right? And we know that Yahushai came, and they don't accept Yahushai. So we believe that Yahushai came and he's going to come again, right? For the second coming. So they don't believe that there's a second coming, right? Yeah, so this is Ezekiel chapter 35, verse 1. Moreover, the word of Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Mount Seir, which is another way of saying Esau or Edom, or what you would call Idumea, right? And prophesy against it, and say unto it, Thus saith Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, power, behold, which means feast your eyes, look, pay attention, O Mount Seir, which is Esau, Edom, or Idumea, I am against thee. So the Lord's against Esau, Edom, Idumea, right? I am against thee, and I will stretch out my hand against thee, and will make thee most desolate, and I will lay thy cities waste, and thus shall be desolate, and thus shall know that I am Yahweh, right? Because thus has had a perpetual hatred, and have shed the blood of the children of Israel, right? You so-called Black, Hispanic, and Native Indians of Indian and Negro descent, and you Israelite foreigners around the world, by the force of the sword, and the modern day sword is the gun, and in the time of their calamity, and in the time that their iniquity had an end, right? Let me skip down to 10. You can read the rest if you want, but just getting to the point. So it says, because thus has said these two nations, which will be the southern kingdom and the northern kingdom, the so-called blacks, the so-called Hispanic, so-called Black, Hispanic, and Native Indian, right? Because really, I guess they call them Hispanic because some of those other ones, because the Spanish took up, but then they also call like Ephraim, which is so-called Puerto Rican. They also call them the Taino Indians, so they're supposed to be Indians too. So a lot of times I would just say the the so-called Indian tribes of America, or the indigenous, right? Just say the indigenous of America, so-called Black and indigenous of America, right? Southern Kingdom, Northern Kingdom. This is because basically they had us in slavery, and these two countries, which would be Israel, Palestine, shall be mine, and I will possess it, whereas the Lord was there, right? Because they're in the land as if the Lord is there. The Lord's not in that land. The Lord did not sanction them to be put in that land, because the Lord said it was going to be a certain way. And the Lord said, when we get in that land, there ain't going to be any war. But since they've been there, it's been war. So it doesn't make sense. And they said the bastards should dwell in that land, right? And it says someone's going to take it for their possession. And that's what it's basically still saying, right? Therefore, as I liveth, right? Yahweh is the real true living power. Saith Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, I will even do according to thy anger, because what they hate it. They hate us, man. They hate us because they ain't us, right? Basically. And according to thy envy, right? Because they're the envious of the blessing that the Lord gave to Jacob, to Yaquab, right? Who later wrestled with an angel, and name got changed to Yasha-Allah, right? He prince with God, or prince of power, right? Right? So they were jealous of that. So envious, thy envy which thus has used out of thy hatred against them, right? You so-called Black, Hispanic, and Native Indian, and I will make myself known among them, right? And that's what we're doing. We're starting to know who we are, right? That's what's making us infamous, right? And when I have judged thee, right? Which ultimately is what the Lord is doing this very hour, right now. He's judging them. And thus shall know that I am Yahweh, Bashem Yahweh Shai, and that I have heard all thy blasphemies, right? Because they've been speaking against the Lord, which thus has spoken against the mountain of Israel, right? To destroy us, because they ultimately trying to get everybody with the digital mark of the beast, right? Try to destroy us. saying they are laid waste, they are given us to consume. Hey man, they're just given to us. The Lord allowed them to just be this, and now we get to consume it, and now we get to steal the blessing back. That this is the thing, the wickedness in their heart and in their mind. Thus with thy mouth ye have boast against me. So in all in factual, you really just boast against the Lord, because the Lord said he would never do away with Israel, man. And have multiplied your words against me. I have heard them. So the Lord is going to be against Mount Seir. Thus saith Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, when the whole earth rejoice, right? Right, when they finish with their NWO, putting that into play, I will make thee desolate. So once you put your NWO, right, into play through your WHO, through your NWO, through your WHO, putting that into play, the Lord's gonna make you desolate. As thus did it rejoice at the inheritance of the house of Israel. Boy, you rejoiced against us, the so-called Black, Hispanic, and Native Indian, man. You rejoice against the Israelites scattered amongst the nations, because it was desolate. So will I do unto thee. Thus shall be desolate, O Mount Seir. What? And all Idumea, which is another way of saying Edomites. Esau, Edom. Even all of it, and they shall know that I am Yahweh. Right? Yeah, and with that, I want to give all praises and all honor and all glory unto Yahweh, Ba'asham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakak Wadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, who were well. Salutations to the Akim in the four winds, preaching in truth and sincerity, risking their lives more now than ever. The hopeful elect, Shalom. To the Israelite foreigners who phenotype may look like another nation, but bloodline goes back to Israel and have come back to the fold. Shalom. To you sisters, you Akwathium, who listen and learn under your husband or your spiritual leader in silence and have come back to the fold. Shalom. Death to America.